Wow, the season finale, Rings of Power. It's here. It's something. It is something, and we're gonna be yeah, we're diving in. I'm Tim Anderson, aka Renfill, sometimes known as the Bearded Dwarven Princess. If you've never been here to one of my reviews before, here's how we do things. At the end of the episode, I give two reviews. One is the review from the biased Tolkien fan perspective. Did they do a good job with the lore in this episode? How does it stack up in terms of a lore perspective? And the other review is the unbiased review, as if I was a generic fantasy fan watching a generic fantasy show. How does it stand up against those types of storytelling tropes, visual effects, composition of music, so on and so forth? Does it stand on its own as a generic fantasy episode or a fantasy show? Those are at the end. In the meantime, we're going to be reviewing everything. As always, this is a spoiler full review. I don't do spoiler free. This is the whole thing. We're whole kit and caboodle into the wilds, into the bush, doing it all. Um, if you've never watched one of these before and you like what you see here today, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, support like all of these amazing people to keep this channel full time. You can find more information at the end about how you could do that. In the meantime, let's just get into my show notes because they are plentiful and there's a lot going on. So we start off with the stranger in the woods looking at an apple from Nori. And he's, remember hearing this voice, you're not evil, you're good. Um, and then he meets the witches, and I really don't understand the shape change here as the witches pretend like they're Nori, and he's like, "Oh, Nori, my friend," and then they shape change, and it's the witches. And it's just it made me this whole thing where they're like offering him the apple back. It's just like the apple of Eden, baby, and it's just ugh. And then they give this reveal of like, we're here to serve you, Lord Sauron, and there's evil music, winds and powers, and black fingers, and we want you to be distracted in the first 5 minutes of the show with another red herring that's absolute bullshit, because we know this guy isn't Sauron, despite the fact that they've alluded to him maybe being a bad guy. We know he's not it, and especially just whatever. You'll understand how stupid this is as we get into the episode. Um, Credits roll, opening sequence. Now we're riding to Region, and Galadriel's on a horse again because she can't be an elf without riding a horse, and the wind's in her hair and it's slow motion. I'm an elf on a horse. There's a scene here with Celebrimbor, and they're stressing, him and Elrond are stressing about the ore. If there's only something we could do with this, if there's only a way to do more with less, with this tiny bit of mithril. Remember, we only have until spring, and that's almost here. We're out of time. It's time for the elves to abandon Middle Earth. But wait, a horse neighs in the background. Meh! And here comes Galadriel riding in with Halbrand. And Elrond's like, wait, what? I thought you were in Valinor, but who cares? Elven magic here. We're going to save the king of the Southlands. Um, Halbrand, flash forward, he's however many hours or days later, he's magically healed, and he's here in Celebrimbor's workshop with talk of alloys and crafting and how I can help you. And he's stroking Celebrimbor's ego as the greatest elven smith of all time. And oh, look, what are these three gems? And oh, this particular ore. And let's strengthen them for yeah, and how the hell would a master smith like Celebrimbor not know about alloys and strengthening metals, and suddenly this human from nowhere? This is the moment, by the way. I'm not even gonna wait, because this is a spoiler review. Halbrand is Sauron. This is not where we get the official reveal, but if you're honestly, this is the worst part about it for me. And by the way, I am spinning up an entire episode about this at some point in the near future about I really wanted Halbrand to be someone other than Sauron. And I've said through multiple episodes, I said, if he is revealed as Sauron, it's going to be the worst reveal of a villain in the history of all television or cinema, because they gave so many red herrings along the way to make it obvious that he was Sauron. That's not good storytelling. You don't want people to know that this is the bad guy. You're supposed to keep them guessing. Like they kind of did that with the stranger, right? Like they kind of kept you guessing, along the way. But with Halberd, it's like they threw it in your face. Like every time he walked by a forge, and he's interested in forging, and he's a master smith of swords, and he can help the smiths of Numenor, and all of these things. It's like you made it so freaking obvious. And this right here, if you would have to be stupid not to understand that this moment when he's revealing to Celebrimbor that all of these ways that you can help them, and I really just kind of was like, did you guys really jump down this rabbit hole? And they totally did, especially when he's like, don't worry about it, Celebrimbor, call it a gift, my knowledge to you. And it's like, again, full episode. I'm gonna do that later. Full episode up on my YouTube channel later today, probably by 9 a.m. Central Time. I'll have it up. Um, we get another sequence here. The king of Numenor is dead. Do we even care? Like, the whole Numenor plot line feels stupid and pointless at this. And I don't understand the point of the dying king showing the invented sister of Isildur the Palantir, other than maybe that's going to play into season 2 because she's going to see her brother still alive, and that's going to tie into Elendil wanting to go back to Middle Earth. I don't know. Another sequence here. We've got Gil-galad, Celebrimbor, Elrond, Galadriel all talking about what could we make from this metal? A scepter? A crown? Why a crown? Asks Gil-galad, and Celebrimbor goes, because a circular form would be ideal, allowing the power to circle back around and strengthen itself. And Gil-galad's like, you would give all that power to one being? No, not to one being, sir, says Elrond, but to you, the king, to save the elves. And Gil-galad's like, perilous are these whisperings. Oh, foreboding, foreshadowing. Yes, indeed. And he says, since the eruption of the volcano, the tree of Linden is bleeding leaves. We need to leave Middle Earth immediately. Return to Linden right now. And as this speech is going on, Celebrimbor is talking about all of this, these ideas they have for the metal, and suddenly Galadriel's all sus. She's like looking at Celebrimbor because he's explaining that these ideas came from Sauron, and she's like, wait, what? What? Power of a flesh? Where did you hear those words? And was Halbrand with you when you spoke them? And um, suddenly she wants to find more about his bloodline, and she wants someone to dig into the records. And Elrond's begging the king for more time. Give me 3 months, and he gets 3 weeks, I think, is what I understand here. And did it take like 100 years, like 90 years or something, for the rings to be forged, and they're going to suddenly do it in 3 weeks? I don't really know. Whatever. We're back to the stranger sequence. The witches put him to sleep, because he can't control his powers. The Harfoots are here. They're going to rescue him. Nori and Sadak and Poppy. This fight sequence is pretty awesome. The fight between the witches and our stranger. Pretty sweet. But he's weak until Nori gives him a staff. And suddenly, bang, bam, bam! From shadow you came, and from shadow I bid you to return. He's not Sauron. He's fucking Gandalf. Like, oh, these reveals are so... Like, we knew he was Gandalf. We were hoping he wasn't Gandalf because he's here way too early in the timeline, but they don't care about timelines, right? I feel like this sequence after this with Muriel and Elendil on the boat feels completely pointless. I fast forwarded through it. Whatever. There's an explosion in the forge. We've been using too much force, says Celebrimbor, or Sir Halbrand. Sorry. Wait, that's brilliant, says Celebrimbor. Why don't we do this instead? And now we get this confrontation between Galadriel and Halbrand, where she confirms, like, the line of the kings died 1,000 years ago with no heir. Who are you? And he's like, I told you I'm a dead man. I told you I found this on a dead man. Sorry. The relic of the king. And he finally reveals to her, I am in fact Sauron. So even though this is the official reveal of Halbrand as Sauron, we knew it back in the Forge. And a lot of us knew it back in the very beginning when he was first introduced. But it was also, I wanted so badly for it not to be him because it was way too predictable. Whatever. There's this whole flashback sequence where Sauron's in her mind trying to convince her to join him. Then Elrond wakes her in the river. They rush back to the forge. She won't confirm with them who Halbrand is. Why? I don't understand. Only that he's gone. Why the fuck would she not reveal this? And now she tells them that we're not going to just make 2 rings. We're going to make 3 rings because 1 will always corrupt. 2 will always divide. But with 3, there's going to be balance. I Celebrimbor says, "Well, we need gold and silver from Valinor. Only your brother's blade is going to suffice." Whatever. Back to Nori and the stranger, and now the stranger has full control of his faculties, and he's like, we're going to Rune. Adventures must be shared, of course, he says, and Nori and Poppy are going to go with him. The Frodo and Sam Fem versions, of course they're going to be the founders of the Shire. You know this is going to happen because they're on their way with Gandalf, right? As he literally turns and looks to the horizon and says, and she's like, which way are we going? And he's like, I don't know, I think we're going this way. There's a sweet smell on the air this way, and when in doubt, follow your nose. Oh my god. I want to cry. Like, I want to cry because the writing is so bad. They literally are just lifting lines from Peter Jackson's films. There's the crafting sequence as they forge the three rings. Visually, it looks stunning. We get Halbern looking over Mordor with a smile. Fade to black with a song, actually singing about the three rings to the Elven Kings. 7 for the Dwarf Lords in their halls of stone. 9 for mortal men's doomed to die, and the one ring forged and more, blah, 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 blah. Where are all the other rings? Why are they only showing the forging of the 3? Like, what is the point of any of this? I don't know. I don't know. So, we've gotten to the end. I have to give my review now. So, let's start with the biased version of the review. I have progressively given these episodes lesser and lesser scores, worse and worse scores as we've gone on. If I could give this episode a negative on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it a negative. But as it stands, it gets a 0. They broke. And I know some people are going to be like, "But we've told you that since the beginning, Tip." Yeah, I know, but I'm still watching this. I told Nathan the other day, Nathan Napalm, we were doing our podcast, and I told him after the podcast, it's like I honestly feel like I'm from like one of those sci-fi shows, where I'm a salvage guy, right? And I'm going into the wreckage of ships, and I'm pulling out the bits and pieces that can be sold to the highest bidder, and I'm literally going into Rings of Power and pulling out the bits and pieces and selling them on YouTube. Um, so I mean, I'm watching this really from an entertainment standpoint, but the lore, they broke the lore in this episode. It's a 0 out of 10. Like, you can't, you fucked it. Like, you can't screw it up any worse than you already did. Like, this is one of the worst. Honestly, I would say, I'm going to say it. This is the worst adaptation I've ever seen of any intellectual property of all time. Just I can take a lot. I mean, I'm pretty willing. I'm not a book purist by any means, but this is just you didn't even try to make an adaptation. You just went with your own thing, and I cannot believe that the Tolkien estate, in my mind, the Tolkien estate sold out. Like Simon Tolkien is just wants a paycheck, and there is no more integrity left in the Tolkien estate. This was the worst. Just no, like you can't. Nope. But let's do the unbiased review. Honestly, the visuals in this episode were quite possibly some of the best in the whole season, especially the crafting of the rings sequence. The fight between the witches and Gandalf was really amazing. Um, just a lot of good visuals here. Bear McCreary's soundtrack is on point as always. And if you strip my personal feelings out of the equation, the flow of this episode is pretty good. Um, you get your major reveal. You get some multiple major reveals. Who's the stranger and who is? Even though they didn't say the stranger's name, he's revealed to be one of the Istar, wizards. It's Gandalf. Especially with all the follow your nose and back to shadow. It's we're literally lifting lines from Peter Jackson's films because these people want the film fans to love their show. Don't worry about the books. You loved Peter Jackson's films, you're going to love our show. Here's these beloved characters. We're going to use the same lines of dialogue to get you to love these characters. It's cheesy. It's really cheesy. But it does, you know, it fits. So from an unbiased review, Chris hasn't watched the episode yet, so actually have to confirm with her. But I would say this one gets another like 6 out of 10. It's less than last week. It's less than the last couple of weeks because I gave those like 7 out of 10. This one gets a 6 out of 10. There are a lot of good elements here, good visuals, good um, transitions. We get good reveals in terms of the big bad villain and some other stuff. But overall, there's still some cheesy writing, and people who have watched Peter Jackson's films are going to recognize that even that they've just lifted dialogue and used it here, which is a cheesy thing, which lessens the impact that these characters and their dialogue could have had. So overall, 0 out of 10 from a lore perspective, 6 out of 10 from an unbiased view. Overall, I honestly thought the Wheel of Time adaptation was really, really bad, and I thought it was the worst thing I'd ever seen at that time. But Rings of Power has now taken that for me, the worst thing ever. Um, Love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Stick around because I am going to have way more Rings of Power content coming to you. In fact, later today we've got the Halbern slash Sauron episode coming out at 9 a.m. Central, so stay tuned for that. To support the channel like all of these amazing people, it's really simple. On a upload like this or a premiere, when it's premiering, you can do a super chat or a sticker down there. And when it's after the fact on an upload, you can do a super thanks. You can also join. We have 3 tiers of memberships down there as part of the Adventurers Guild. We have a Patreon page for the fantasy world that I've created with my wife and my brother. There's multiple things there. There's a book series, there's a tabletop game, there's a point and click adventure game. Check all that stuff out. Stick around. More Rings of Power stuff coming as we cover season 2. And of course, more stuff from season 1 over the coming weeks and months and beyond. And of course, check out all the other stuff with Wheel of Time, House of the Dragon, and beyond on my channel. Thanks so much for sticking around for the Rings of Power stuff, everybody. Love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, don't forget, later on today, new episode. Cheers.